Hey guys, welcome back to a last World of Warships stream here from Gamescom 2017. I am Falan, Community Manager for Wargaming in the EU, and I'm sitting here with Evan, our Executive Producer for World of Warships, and our Community Specialist for World of Warships, Taki. Hey guys.
Hello.
Before we start, I wanted to mention a couple of social media things for you guys, because Gamescom is still going on, so you can still participate in a couple of contests. So the first one is the Wargaming GC contest. If you guys share anything with the hashtag WargamingGC, hashtag, yeah, you know, then you can win a couple of really cool stuff. So just share your experience, share whatever you want to share with this hashtag, and participate in the contest. The other cool thing is that we have some special frames for Facebook. So if you guys want to show your interest, your support for GC 2017, then you can use these frames for your profile picture. So just go to Facebook/profile-pic-frames, and you can find those frames there. And that's it, basically. So let's cut to the chase. We are going to discuss the PanAsian Ships today, and then also we are going to discuss all the things that are coming in 2017, right guys? So let's start with the PanAsian Ships, because that's the cool new content that we are eagerly awaiting, right? So,
of course.
Maybe you guys can talk about the tree in general, introduce it a little bit, tell us which ships we can expect to play.
So let me start by maybe just explaining why we're doing PanAsian Ships in the first place. So we were kind of looking very specifically not for content for Asia, but content for China very specifically, because that is a realm or a community that's very hermetic and that's very, very different from all the others. So we were kind of looking for ships that can fit into both regions, let's say, for Chinese players as ships that can be labeled as Asian or as Chinese, and for Pan-Asian communities in general to have some sort of line that would resonate with as many people in the region as possible. So this is pretty cool and kind of non-standard for us, because it sets a precedent for having a line that's not tied to one nation specifically. So it's a line that consists of ships that have different flags on them and can therefore evoke emotions with people from different nations in the region. And that kind of sets the precedent for maybe having pan-European ships in the future if the community kind of accepts this approach and this tree, because it also comes with, let's say, certain, I don't want to say drawbacks, but with certain peculiarities, because necessarily those ships then come with different national and engineering backgrounds, so they will not have like a homogeneous engineering history or homogeneous progression or whatever.
But I guess that also means that it's a bit hard to come up with one perk, one special thing that kind of unites all of those ships, right? Because as far as I understand, in World of Warships, we usually try to go for this kind of stuff to basically have one line of ships representing some kind of special thing for that nation. So what can we maybe talk about how this is implemented with the PanAsian ships?
One common trait that they seem to be sharing is that they are basically more gun-oriented designs, because they start with basically one German export design and then go through various, a mix of British designs, mix of Soviet designs, American designs, but they all share the trait that they were generally designed as a kind of destroyer squadron leaders or large fleet destroyers, so they share quite good gun design. I mean, top three tiers are American, so there it comes without saying, and the rest should be in the similar mold.
So I suppose the guns are the main focus. Can you maybe, I'm not sure if you know from the top of your head, how long the range of the torpedoes is?
Well, the ships are still in development and they've just entered testing, so I wouldn't really comment that much about it, but I mean, they should be usable. They should have usable torpedoes. They should share, for example, the basic traits of the American destroyer line, but there
I didn't want
might-
any specific numbers, but just an idea about what we can expect from the torpedoes.
we can expect some special surprise probably from the torpedoes.
Yes, actually, I don't know. Have we already talked to that to the community about?
Yes, we mentioned it already.
Yeah. So if we mention deep water torpedoes, then it should not be a surprise that these ships will introduce deep water torpedoes. Hopefully, everything will be okay with the design and development work for that feature.
So can you guys go into a little detail about these torpedoes for people who don't know what we're talking about?
So those will be torpedoes that do not explode on contact with every ship class. So basically, they will detonate only with ships that have a certain draft, which generally will mean bigger ships, so capital ships. And the question how it's going to work in detail on the user side still remains to be seen, because we've not yet decided whether we actually want to calculate or show people the draft of all of the ships in the game, or whether we want to lock it by class, for example. We're probably going to do it the first way, but that also means that we'll necessarily need to show people like some sort of hints and some sort of UI elements that will explain like against which ships these torpedoes will work.
So it kind of tells me that it's going to be interesting to balance the ships, right? Because you guys have these deep water torpedoes, which are really good against capital ships, but then again, they are also really good when it comes to guns. So they are also good against destroyers. So I guess there is going to be a lot of balancing going on there.
Yeah, basically one of the balancing factors, for example, would be that the deep water torpedoes would then mean that you cannot really use torpedoes against other destroyers. So
okay, I guess that means that they have a disadvantage against destroyers.
well, that's why they have the guns.
Okay.
But it all depends on the testing. So as I said, the ships just entered the first testing stages. So we shall see.
Okay, so anything can change at this point.
Definitely.
Okay. Can you guys maybe mention a couple of really interesting ships, maybe the nations that are going to be in this new line?
Yes, we can. And since obviously
I'm just laughing because there's a cheat sheet because nobody can remember the true names.
Obviously the names.
True names of these demons.
Yeah, exactly. The names are obviously a bit difficult. And I apologize in advance if I screw up the pronunciation.
I have to admit that I am enjoying this a lot, Marek. I just wanted to put you on the spot with this.
But one interesting ship, for example, is the Shenyang, which was a Japanese destroyer Namikaze that was converted during the World War II into a ship carrying the suicide torpedoes, the Kaitens. So when she was transferred to China as a war prize, she had only one gun, and obviously that would be kind of tricky to represent in game. So we went with one of the proposals for rearmament. So basically that replaced all Japanese guns with American 5-inch guns, and replaced torpedoes with American torpedoes. So she would be basically interesting mix of Japanese, hull and American weapons. But I think definitely for me personally the most interesting ship in the entire line is the Tier 7, the Indonesian Gajah Mada. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Let's hope so.
Which started its life and construction as the N-class destroyer HMS Nonpareil, but was sold to the Netherlands, to the Dutch Navy as Tierkides. I don't know if I pronounced it right.
I'm gonna trust you on this.
And in the 1950s, she was sold then to the Indonesia, and as such, she's third. Including the Tier 3 in this line and Tier 5, she will be among the 3rd, 4th and 5th British destroyers introduced in games by design, but obviously she will be flying the Indonesian flags. The N-class was kind of a big gunboat that was well armed with twin with twin guns. So I personally expect she would feel a lot like the Bliskavica, and if she does, then that will be a very good ship.
Okay, that sounds good. So we have a lot of nations in this line, right? So I heard German ship, even though it's flying a different color.
Yeah, construction-wise, we have Japanese, American, British, and German designs. Yeah. And nation-wise, we have obviously the mainland China. We have the ships that served in Taiwan Navy. We have ships that served in South Korean Navy, in Indonesia, Thailand. And
so quite a mix.
Yes, okay. Definitely.
Cool. So one last question about these PanAsian ships. When can we expect them? Can you say something about that?
Well, I guess the best answer is whenever you see them on our Facebook feeds being announced as entering Super Test, that means that they're going to be getting close. And generally speaking, that's going to be the next line that we release just after British battleships, so they're not that far off. But I don't want to commit to saying like an update number just because we're not final on that yet.
Yeah, I guess the process will be very similar to any other line. So first we will start seeing them in-game in the hands of super testers, then community contributors, and when they start appearing, it generally means that they are getting closer, but still, for example, for the British battleships, we were live testing them for free updates. So
so whenever they are done, basically, whenever we are satisfied that they are balanced.
Yeah, definitely should happen this year.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, speaking of or about this year, let's talk about stuff that's coming in 2017 still, because we have quite a few months left, right? So I saw quite a few things already announced on our portal. We are already testing the next update. People can already try out some of the new effects. Can you guys maybe talk about these, because this seems really significant?
To be honest, there's not much to talk about in terms of new effects. You have to see them to appreciate them. So it's mostly just one of the next steps after we managed to integrate DirectX 11 into our game engine, which allows us to do a lot of graphical upgrades to the things, and these visual VFX upgrades are just one of the first steps of doing that. So you'll just see new lighting effects and new gunfire effects, which actually look pretty amazing because they finally make my secondaries on my Bismarck look like the cannonade that it deserves to look like. So it just makes the game much more immersive.
Okay, and I guess the same is true for sounds, because we also talked about the new sounds that are being introduced.
Yep, there are the war drums in the current test, so again, we can describe them, but it's far better to just try them out. The public test should be still running until, I think, Monday or Tuesday, so you still have time to jump in.
If you want to try these out, just jump on the public test and then give us your feedback, and we will gather it on the forums.
It's actually very interesting because most players never notice this kind of update, because we actually had adaptive and reactive audio cues before, where music changed depending on what was happening and what environment the player was currently in. And when you're playing, you're usually so focused on what's happening visually and what's happening with your controls and your ship that you don't necessarily notice. You just later on, after the battle, you feel like, I remember this, situation, so and now I remember that the music changed and there was these cool drums. But
I guess it would be really cool to just go back to a really old version of the game and then compare it when it comes to the sound, when it comes to visuals, and we would see a huge update.
Yeah, actually, if people want to, they can just go on YouTube and look for videos for World of Warships 2 years ago and then compare.
Okay.
So one thing to bear in mind here is that basically all these upgrades are generally more evolutionary. So basically the game evolves over time, so you don't really get a sudden revolutionary effect with one update, but step by step getting better. So then, yeah, when you compare 1 year ago and now, you will see the huge change. But
so basically these updates are going to come in the future as well, so we are constantly upgrading the visuals and the sound of the game. Right?
Yep.
As well as the balance, obviously.
Of course.
Of course. I'm going to have questions about that later on.
Sure.
Okay, first something that's kind of related to videos. Can you guys share something about the replay system?
what do you want to know about the replay system?
When is it coming?
That's the hardest question. The easiest answer to that is when it's done. So we actually, it was not a big priority for us because we considered that a system that's useful or used mostly by the top end of our community, so the most competitive players, the most hardcore players, and of course streamers and video makers. But in general, until now, we were fine with like allowing people to proxy the system with the tools that we currently had. But it will become more of a focus for us once we release Clan and once we are kind of going more towards competitive gameplay. If Clans takes off and if we see that the game is ready for more competitive gameplay. So we hope to release replays by the end of the year, or rather an upgraded replay system. Hopefully that will also include server replays so that replay files will finally become like client agnostic, so you will not have a new patch break all of your previous replay files, which a lot of people were requesting. Hopefully we'll also be able to include post-battle statistics and all of the information that people usually wanted to have in the replay files as well. So generally a lot of the stuff that people were asking for the replay system to have, we'll try to have.
Okay, that sounds good. And I suppose the training rooms fall also under this category, right? Or they're very similar?
Yes, pretty much it's the same thing. So we're just going to commit to having a revamped UI for the training system, and hopefully we'll actually have that ready before the replays.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about that balance a little bit. Let's talk about specifically about BBs, because a lot of people ask me to ask this question. So what do you guys think about the current BB balance? The British ships are coming, so a lot of people are going to play battleships again. Do you think that we have too much BBs in the game, too many? Is it okay? How's it going?
From a let's say a game health point of view, it's okay. Statistically speaking, of course we have an overpopulation of battleships, and there's like no denying that. But people have to understand that we will always have an overpopulation of British battleships in general, and this is not to say that we're fine with battleships flooding the queues and all games being only battleships. That's not true. But battleships will always be the class that most people want to play, which means that there will always be more battleships in the game in general. Now, that being said, we are taking certain steps to like controlling the population of battleships, and deepwater torpedoes will be one of the features that will allow people to become more effective against battleships with certain playstyles. So there are certain gameplay ways that we can kind of try to control that, but at the same time we're kind of fine with the overall statement that there are more battleships in the game. It's not going to break the game.
So what about the class balance? How do you feel about that currently? What about battleships, DDs, CVs, whichever you think you want to mention specifically?
That's a topic that's very much worth discussing. It's just that it's a long discussion that basically 3 or 4 hours long, when we can go to like really details about what ships should be able to do and what classes should be able to do against each other and in the battle. I think we can say that we're like not in a perfect place with the class balance in the game, and one of the pain points is obviously carriers, which still need a rework, and the rework will still come, and we hope that it will come next year before we release the next carrier tree. Other than that, of course, there are certain things that we need to look at. Well, right now we're going to look at the competitive meta, so the mechanics that kind of govern current tournament play with smoke and with IFHE and with radar. That's something that we need to look at, because that was also benefiting battleship players to a large degree, and we need to change that because that's actually not an intended let's say, outcome of these mechanics, because they were mostly meant to be used by cruisers, for example, or by destroyers, depending on which one. So we're kind of going to change that and bring it back into the design direction that we initially envisioned for those mechanics. And I know that this is controversial for a lot of people because it will necessarily mean that they will need to change their playstyle and that it will slightly or even significantly impact the playstyle of certain ships in the game. But I'm confident to say that this will not make certain ships obsolete or unplayable, it will just make them different. So people will generally have to adapt, and I think that that's fine, that the game undergoes certain changes once in a while, because it kind of refreshes the gameplay of the game, even though it makes it different and it makes it maybe less enjoyable for certain player types and player styles. But I think that those players will generally just find another fun ship or another fun playstyle, or just adapt, and it will be fine.
Okay, I see that Marek wants to.
Yeah, I would just jump in here because.
Sorry for hogging.
No problem. Because some of these changes were actually described a bit more in detail recently on the developer blog. So if you are interested in it, you can try to look for Warships development blog on Facebook.
Yep.
And for example, with the smoke, one of the main changes is that now basically if you are firing from inside the smoke, you still can be spotted at a certain distance, which will be obviously shorter, so smoke will help, but it won't make you immune to spotting. So for example, enemy team destroyer can now venture closer to the smoke and spot you for his team if you are shooting from the smoke, because basically while the smoke, for example, with British cruisers was intended to help them both as a defensive tool and slightly as an offensive tool, their desired playstyle wasn't to just sit in the cloud of smoke and spam shells, because that's basically not really that much fun and not too dynamic, and that's what generally was seen a lot in the competitive play. So
I guess the idea here is to promote more active, aggressive play, right, with these changes for the smoke.
More active, definitely, yeah.
Yes, that's generally more active, not necessarily more aggressive, because it depends on the ship and the class and the situation. And it's actually interesting that you mentioned DevBlog, because that's something that we really care about, in a sense that we haven't really done that since Alpha, and we haven't really been transparent enough to people about why we're doing certain things. So that's kind of how and why we want to, or how we want to remedy the situation. So hopefully going forward, people will be able to understand our design decisions better by just having this outlet where we just give you what we're doing or what we're thinking of, and just a small description of why we're doing this. It's not something where we want to really go into too much discussions with people, so you should not see a lot of comments there or discussions from us. We're just giving you this information that otherwise community members would be able to dig up, or certain media outlets would be able to dig out from the files, but not give you not give you with any context. So we want you to have at least a small amount of context, and that's mostly because when you talk about specifically balance to players, the very common situation is that everybody sees balance only from the perspective of the battle they just played, in the ship that they just played, in the ship that they love, and keeping in mind the result of that battle as well. So whether they lost, whether they won, whether they're in a good mood, a foul mood, that's generally what everybody sees for themselves. Whereas for us, this is never the case. It's actually exactly the opposite, because we cannot look at very specific battle results. So while we acknowledge that you might have a bad battle in a ship, and that skews your perception, or even a streak of bad battles in a ship in a certain situation, that drives your perception of a certain mechanic or of the game in general, we have to focus on totally different arguments when we're balancing, because the game needs to be fair for
that makes a lot of sense.
For a lot of combinations of ships and combinations of players in the battle.
Yeah, I think that the players have also noticed that lately we have been much more transparent. We try to explain the different design changes that you guys implemented a lot more. That's why we have the blog, that's why we have so many articles on the portal, that's why we are doing the Q&As and these streams and everything. And maybe we can even improve on it in the future.
Yeah, of course, we need to improve on it.
I hope so.
Let's be fair, we're shit at communicating, so we need to be better at communicating.
Yeah, but we are still better than we used to be, so I guess it's an ongoing process as well, right?
Definitely.
Yes, you never stop to learn.
One thing, also one important caveat to this is that obviously the more open we are in advance, the more often we might pitch some things that in the end don't pan out because of testing. So basically whatever appears on the dev blog is temporary, basically.
Yes.
You cannot take it as 100% granted, because maybe the test will show, like with the first iteration of the smoke changes, that it's not really good and we will need to rework it or completely drop it. So
yeah, exactly. We have test iterations exactly for that purpose, for testing. So you will see things that we will just throw out there and try out, even though we know that they are highly controversial or even totally bad. But we still need to find out what implications those things have when actually implemented into the game and at least played on even in a test iteration without like the real environment. So we know that there will be controversial things on the dev blog. Just please don't treat that as gospel or as release date. That's not how it's gonna be.
So the idea is that we are keeping people in the loop, but they also have to remind them basically that all of these changes are subject to change. The changes are subject to change.
Yes.
Right?
It's just about the context, because if we don't show it ourselves, it will be leaked or it will be data mined, and people will get the same information just without context. So we just want to provide this context.
Exactly, I completely agree. Okay, let's go to something else. What new ships can we expect in the game? Can you maybe talk about that? A lot of people are looking for new French ships maybe in the future.
and one guy on on Facebook is all the time grilling us over Battleship Roma.
Exactly. So can you guys talk about these upcoming ships, or if there are upcoming ships like that?
Well, that depends what exactly we should talk about. It's actually, I think it's not a secret anymore that we're building British battleships in the background. When those will be ready, it's hard to say, just because the development cycle for battleship models is super long. It's like 6 months or 7 months or 8 months, depending on the complexity of the model. So when those will be ready, I can't say right now. Battleship Roma is also confirmed as coming as a premium sometime in the future as well. Other than that, we will have a PanAsian cruiser, which is not really that special for the European community, let's say, but
well, it actually might be, because she has also very interesting lineage and origin. So
yeah, okay.
Any details about that? Maybe? No?
I would say the main detail would be to follow our Facebook next week.
Good point. Okay.
Okay.
Any new modes that we can be looking forward to?
Well, to be honest, not really that many new modes in development. The biggest new mode that you are going to see will be tied to clans. So, clans are currently in testing and in final development stages, and they will generally consist of two gameplay types. You'll have a more social-based, clan-based building type, like people generally compare it to strongholds in World of Tanks. And that's a fair comparison to a degree. So that will be like for the more social part of the community, where people can just get together and play the game as they normally would, without too much competitive involvement, but just have a clan and something to do with that clan. And the other part obviously will be the competitive part, where clans can play against clans and like compete against each other for glory and stats.
To this I can add that there were already some tests involving some very good clans from basically all regions, so we are waiting for the results of the test waves and basically evaluating them.
Okay. Some people were curious about any upcoming German premium DD maybe?
Yes, there will be. Actually, there will be more than one. But the release timeline, I can't really say.
Okay, but it's coming at some point.
Yes,
Definitely, we ideally want basically every branch to have some suitable premiums, because if nothing else, they are always useful as captain trainers. So
Okay, and maybe a port for Germans, a German port?
yes, there will be. Should I spoil what it will be?
that depends on you, I guess.
Please do if you can.
So, I remember that we had promised like a European port, and I know that St. Petersburg doesn't count as European really for the European region. So
Yeah, obviously.
yes, we're working on a German port. There are some choices, and one of those choices is Hamburg. So that's potentially what we're gonna see in the game.
Okay, so it's confirmed. German port is coming. What about more customization options? Because a lot of people are looking forward to those. Anything interesting?
I definitely want my Mountbatten pink camouflage for British cruisers.
So new camouflage, that's an easy yes. Generally, we're going to introduce more camouflage options, and when we get to releasing new unique commanders, we're going to give like those alternative camouflage schemes for other nations as well. As far as new ship customization is concerned, that's a tricky question because it doesn't really make sense for us to invest heavily into things that you can put on your ship in places other than flag masts. So you're going to see more flag options like the ones that are currently tied to unique commanders as well. But right now, not too many specific things like decals, like things that you would know from World of Tanks, just because they have very little value for the player in the end. And I know that people can contradict me on that, saying I really would love to have a decal on my ship, but the point is that you can't really use that or see that in battle just because of the engagement ranges that we have and how people generally play the game. So they would just be lost in the general battle environment.
Okay.
That's why we don't really want to commit too much resources on that. But at the same time, we know that there are certain things that people care about in connection to their accounts. So we're going to be looking at allowing people to customize their accounts. I know that people were asking me for clan emblems as well. Yep. So we're going to try and look at allowing people to have clan emblems in the future as well.
That's cool.
Probably not putting them on ships. Maybe in the forms of flags. Flags is relatively easy as a technical option. So that's possible. But first we need to solve the technical issue of allowing people to upload images and all of that stuff. So we're going to be looking at that in the future as well.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that the clan emblems is something that a lot of people are looking forward to.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay, I have one more question. Can you guys maybe already say something about what is coming for Christmas? I know it's a bit a long way off, but still, it's, you know, it comes pretty fast usually.
Some cool activities.
Okay.
And hopefully some snow.
Snow and cool activities. Okay. So guys, keep your eyes on our Facebook pages. We are going to disclose more details about that when we are approaching Christmas.
Yeah, I think that's more a question for October, because right now it's still so far off in terms of development for us that I can't really say, because like when I come back from here to St. Petersburg, we're going to have a meeting about Christmas, and then we're going to start designing it. Let's say it that way.
Okay, so nothing to really report yet.
There are ideas being floated around, but it's nothing to share yet.
Okay. So is there anything else you guys want to share about 2017 and the upcoming things for World of Warships? Is there something that I missed? Is there something that you want to add?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Say. Well, there are always things that we're considering and looking into for development, or other things that are so long in development and never announced just because they're like being polished and polished and polished and expanded and postponed. So there's always something that we know, but we don't want to comment on yet.
Okay, fair enough. So thank you very much, guys, to talk because it was, I think, very informative. We learned a lot. And I think even though this was our last World of Warships stream, we are still going to have some more streams. So guys, please stay tuned. So thank you, Evan, and thank you, Taki.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.